In this video, I'm going to talk about what diet and lifestyle approaches you can take to improve your polycystic ovarian syndrome or PCOS. Now, in other videos, I did talk about some of the mechanisms that bring about PCOS and how to understand that better. But in this video, I'm talking specifically about what are the practical steps that you can take to improve your PCOS. Now, when it comes to PCOS, one important thing is that diet and gut health are essential to overall well being as far as PCOS goes. And in understanding the dietary approach, we have to understand not only is it important on what you're eating, but also when you're eating. So, those two things combined are extremely important. So, let's start with the diet part of it. And then we'll move on to things like exercise, then stress and sleep. So, when we talk about diet, and specifically in diet, we talk about what to eat. Here are my top tips for how you can improve your PCOS through diet. Now, some of these tips are going to be very generalized and they can be implemented for any patient that comes in that may not have PCOS, but these are still very important because some of the things that PCOS patients suffer from is things like insulin resistance, weight gain, obesity. These are some issues that are very common, and so using these dietary tips and lifestyle tips can be very helpful to improve those issues in PCOS. Number one, avoiding a ultra processed or processed diet. What I mean by this is to eat a lot of those junk foods. You can imagine the foods with heavy ingredient labels, mixed with a lot of ultra processed things. And these foods tend to be very, very calorie dense. However, they are really empty calories in the sense that they don't have a lot of good nutrients. So, to the best of your ability, if you can avoid ultra processed foods and focus more on whole foods, that's going to be beneficial for your overall health. Number two, eating plants and eating a lot of them. One of the most important things in PCOS is to ensure that you don't have gut dysbiosis. And gut dysbiosis refers to a bacterial imbalance within the gut. So you have more bad bacteria than you have good. And this is a real problem, and it often lies at the heart of PCOS. And there's a good correlation between the two, between gut dysbiosis and PCOS. So, in order to improve gut dysbiosis, you have to improve the good bacteria in your gut. And one of the best ways to do that is by the increasing plant foods in your diet. So we're talking about whole foods. We're talking about eating the rainbow, which often refers to eating different vegetables of different colors. And this ultimately increases microbial diversity, which is the different number of good bacterial species that you have within your gut. So eating plenty of fibers. Often it's recommended to eat between 6 to 9 cups of vegetables a day, if that's possible. So that's really important. Then, secondly, incorporating nuts and whole grains into your diet will also be very important. We also want to make sure that we have a healthy amount of meat, poultry, fish, eggs, those types of things in the diet, obviously within moderation, but making sure that we have that included as well. And another important aspect is to make sure that you're eating plenty of fiber. Fiber is very important. We often recommend it at around 30 grams daily because you need a good amount of fiber to, number one, ensure that you are, again, feeding that good bacteria, improving microbial diversity, and ultimately, fiber will also make you feel more full, which will decrease the amount of snacking you're doing and ultimately help with weight. And fiber has tremendous benefits on our overall health, including reducing rates of colon cancer and many more. So, ensuring you're eating a good amount of fiber daily. Sometimes patients are not able to eat a lot of fiber every day. So, there are different things like fiber supplements that can be used as an alternative if you ensure that they don't have any artificial sweeteners or that they don't have any additives in them. So a good quality fiber supplement can replace some of the fiber that can't be taken in through the diet. And lastly, as far as what to eat or what not to eat in this case, avoiding alcohol is very important. A lot of times, patients with PCOS are going to suffer from fatty liver. In fact, women with PCOS are at a high risk of fatty liver But when you add on to that alcohol, that is doubly worse for the liver. So we need to ensure that you're minimizing at best, or at worst rather, minimizing or completely avoiding alcohol to the best of your ability. So that's very important. Now, the second aspect of diet that I was talking about was when to eat, because that is equally as important about as it is what to eat. So when to eat, when you look at that, then we want to make sure we're having regular meals. So the way I like to talk about it is a time restricted window of eating. So that can often be something like 7 a.m. in the morning to 7 p.m. at night, something like 10 to 12 hours at most, where all of your eating is, or most of your eating is happening. And this helps a lot because it avoids nighttime snacking, which can be a big source of extra calories, adding on weight that is unwanted weight. And that can be very problematic from insulin resistance perspectives and many others. So ensuring that you're eating within a time restricted window. So that could look like something like eating breakfast 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., eating basically eating lunch around noon to 1, and then eating dinner perhaps around 6 or 6:30. And so again, these are rough windows to give. Obviously, people have different schedules and they have, various different circumstances, but this is just to give you a rough sense so that you are able to eat regularly, and ensuring that your meal times are not all over the place, ensuring that you are eating consistently, because that really helps the body in just overall better health. So the time window is very important. This avoids late night snacking, like I mentioned. We also want to try and minimize the amount of snacking in between meals. This is very important because, again, most of your calories should be coming from full meals rather than tiny meals with a lot of snacking in the middle. So that's really important. Um, and then um, as far as fasting goes, again, the way to do fasting, there are longer fasts that you can do, 14, 16 hours, and people eat within a very narrow time window. But just in terms of focusing on good overall health, good general habits, the best thing is to have a time restricted amount of eating between roughly 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., or some variable of that where you're eating within at most 12-hour window. So these are some tips, and there's obviously many more, but these are some tips that PCOS patients can use in terms of how they eat. Now, moving on to exercise. Exercise is very important because we know exercise has tremendous benefits for the body as a whole in not just PCOS, but various conditions. You think about mental health, cancer reduction, dementia and Alzheimer's, cardiovascular health. There's so many benefits to exercising. But in the case of PCOS, one of the most interesting and often overlooked areas of benefit that exercise has is actually on the gut microbiome. So, as I mentioned earlier, PCOS patients often have a dysbiotic gut, which means that the balance between the bad bacteria and the good bacteria is often not right. So, they have gut dysbiosis. And that, again, is a bidirectional thing with PCOS, meaning that the gut dysbiosis causes worsening PCOS, and also PCOS causes gut dysbiosis. So there's a bidirectional relationship. But the point is, improving gut dysbiosis will significantly improve your PCOS. And one of the best ways to do that is through exercise. And so exercise is very unique in that it can improve your gut microbiome in some ways that eating and certain dietary measures cannot. So that's why it's very important to incorporate some type of aerobic exercise into the routine as much as possible. Now, for a lot of working professionals, that is an incredibly difficult thing to do because they might be busy parents, they may be busy professionals, they may have other stressors and other things going on in their lives, but it's crucially important to try to carve out time to either do dedicated aerobic exercise or just incorporate as much movement into the day as possible. Too often we get kind of sucked into this sedentary lifestyle of sitting around a desk or not moving much throughout the day. And so we need to get out of that mindset and keep moving as much as possible. So exercise as it pertains to gut microbiome is incredibly important. Now, the other effects that aerobic exercise has is improving blood pressure and lowering that, improving insulin resistance, reducing your risk of dementia and cardiovascular health down the road. Those are all aspects of aerobic health that are separately important. So PCOS patients need to incorporate that into their routine and regimen. Now, when it comes to stress, I think that it's no secret that we all live incredibly stressed lifestyles, incredibly fast-paced lifestyles. That um, there's no shortage of financial stressors and constant news cycles and politics and family stresses. There's no shortage of that, and so we're not talking about a situation where stress is completely gone, but we are talking about a situation to develop effective stress relief techniques. What techniques can you implement in your particular circumstances to mitigate that stress as best as possible? That can be just taking some time to yourself. For some people, that's yoga, mindfulness, meditation, prayer for people that are spiritual and religious. So there are various different ways to mitigate stress, and that can also be taking a walk with a friend, calling a family member, just spending more quality time with your children. That's very important. So making sure you do those things, incorporate those things to control stress as much as possible is very crucial. And lastly, we want to talk about sleep, because sleep is a crucial element of the PCOS journey. And when I talk about sleep and PCOS, the most important thing is to ensure you're getting enough sleep. Because one thing that happens is sleep restriction will actually increase insulin, increase the production of insulin. So you have more likelihood of insulin resistance. And that is obviously bad news from a glucose storage and fat storage perspective, because you're going to tend to put on more weight. So we already have problems with insulin resistance in PCOS, and so now sleep restriction is worsening that. And the other thing is that PCOS women are multiple times more likely to have sleep apnea than are non-PCOS women. And so from that perspective, sleep-related breathing disorders like obstructive sleep apnea also need to be looked at. So making sure that we're not missing that out, that could be done with a home sleep test or an in-lab sleep test at a sleep center, just to make sure that that is being addressed. And then sleep hygiene is incredibly important. And when we talk about sleep hygiene, what we're talking about is how can you regulate your circadian rhythm to the best of your ability to ensure that you're getting good quality sleep, that you're getting enough sleep, and um, that when you do sleep, then that is incredibly restorative to your health as a whole. So that includes ensuring getting adequate sunlight. So sunlight at different points in the day, especially the morning. Morning sunlight is incredibly important. So if you're able to get outside first thing in the morning when the sun does come up, that's really, really beneficial for your circadian rhythm. Secondly is to make sure you're avoiding caffeines later in the afternoon and evenings. That is something that affects people's sleep significantly. Now, if you tolerate caffeine and that's not a problem to you, then it might be okay to have that evening tea. That's not a problem. We don't want to be too restrictive, but at the same time, you want to be very cognizant of your own particular situation and what caffeine does to you. And ensuring that you're sleeping in a dark room. So if you need dark curtains, if you need maybe a sleep mask, if you need the temperature at a certain setting, if you need the noise level figured out. So all of those, while they may seem like just very common sense type of recommendations, it's incredibly important that you get all these right so that you can sleep well, because sleep has such a profound impact on PCOS. So those were just a few quick tips on diet, on lifestyle aspects like exercise, stress, and sleep that I feel are particularly important for women with PCOS. I hope you found this beneficial. And if you have comments or questions, or if you do suffer from PCOS and have anything particular that you want addressed, please leave that below, and I would love to hear from you. Thank you.